After a Republican presidential campaign shouting that Barack Obama could not protect us, a year of shouting that President Obama endangers us all, and almost 2 weeks of crybaby whining that an untrained loser who could not blow up his own junk proves how unsafe we are. The people have rendered their verdict on Commander-in-Chief Obama. The polls in a moment. First, the latest salvo. Senate Republican leader McConnell, back from Afghanistan, claiming U.S. troops there are confused about what to do with enemy combatants, and that a U.S. general questioned about detainee policy, quote, didn't want to answer the question without turning to his lawyer. Part of the same mentality, Mr. McConnell said, that led the Obama administration to charge Umar Farouk Abdul-Muttalib in criminal court rather than in a military proceeding. How much worse are things in Afghanistan with this dangerous confusion, what McConnell calls a preoccupation with detainee rights? The number of Afghans who consider attacks against U.S. troops justified has dropped by 2/3 in 1 year. 8% now calling such attacks justified. That is a new low, down from 25% a year ago. And a senior defense official tells NBC News tonight, quote, tactical approach to handling detainees is clear. Troops know what they are supposed to do. Despite attempts by McConnell and both Cheneys, including Liz's fear-mongering web ad, domestic polls show Americans refuse to be terrorized by them. Oh, nice 24-like graphics. 65% saying they have confidence in the current administration to protect the U.S. from terrorism. That's up from 59% in 2006. 57% giving Mr. Obama thumbs up on his specific handling of the Christmas Day non-bombing. We're joined now by Steve Clemons, director of the American Strategy Program at the New America Foundation and author of the blog The Washington Note. Steve, thanks for your time tonight.
Great to be with you, Keith.
The Cheneys obviously want to push back at any criticism of him, the former vice president. Republicans are trying to whip up their base. But with most independents in that poll approving the Obama response to the underpants non-bomber, what is the GOP game plan here?
Well, I think the GOP game plan is sort of on automatic pilot. I think my colleague Steve Call in the New Yorker magazine said it best. He said that, you know, Dick Cheney and some of these fear-mongers are sort of like the penultimate scene in a slasher movie, totally predictable, trying to push the buttons, make Americans feel scared. And what the president has done is outflank them with a very sober, careful, self-critical position, showing that while there were problems, we're going to fix them, without hyperventilating about every small problem and every threat that might come to this country. So I think Obama is rebuilding trust with American citizens and not making them run, you know, under the covers and, you know, reaching for their duct tape every time something happens.
Why do you think Republicans don't seem to be expressing any confidence in the U.S. troops who are fighting in Afghanistan and insulting them as, you know, confused, not sure about their orders? Why don't they? Do they think the generals are dumb?
Well, I mean, I think it's a very dangerous move for them to do this, because you've got some degree Dick Cheney and the Republicans have been trying to sort of be the national security state Pentagon huggers, and to some degree Barack Obama has been developing a relationship with key generals and players and showing he's listening to them, trying to arm and equip them with the military resources they need and armed Humvees. And I mean, you may recall back during the Bush administration the very severe criticism that the Bush administration got for not helping to equip the soldiers with what they needed. I think Obama's turned that around, and I think that the way the GOP is doing this, it could really turn around for them and backfire when you're out sort of sliming people who are out on the front line and risking their lives.
Is there a second possible backfire in there as Americans, more of them, begin to realize that, you know, dividing us and whipping up fear happens to coincide with what Al-Qaeda wants?
Well, I mean, another really great line in this New Yorker piece called Threats today was that, to some degree, Dick Cheney, like Al-Qaeda, are committing acts that result in their self-isolation. And I think that is a very interesting comment that I think both in Afghanistan and the numbers you just showed, but also among American citizens, I think people are realizing that the values and institutions, the norms that we have here are strengthening. They're a sign of strength. And to give them up into some sort of Kafkaesque purgatory with no law, and you know, the kinds of things we saw in Gitmo, the Oscar-winning documentary Taxi to the Dark Side, that showed, you know, how victims of torture and the absence of law doesn't help this country at all. And I think Barack Obama has replaced at least the vision of rule of law in place of torture chambers, and it's very frustrating to the Cheney crowd.
Apropos of that, A U.S. general suddenly wants to know what the law says before he answers a policy question, and fewer Afghans than ever before want to kill us. What part of this is the average American supposed to find objectionable?
Well, I think the average American should be thrilled that U.S. generals are worried about the law and that we are trying to replace these detainee facilities with something that more resembles what we have here: respect for human rights, respect for international law, respect for American laws, and life in general. This is very, very important for the Afghan citizens that we're trying to protect. Even in Stanley McChrystal's report, of which I was not thrilled with his prescriptions, he nonetheless said we need to be seen as people helping to protect and save and build Afghan civil society, not to ruin it into sort of some pugnacious, anti-Obama militarism.
The kind of at home with the Dick Cheneys translated into a Middle Eastern government.
Right.
Steve Clemons of the New America Foundation and author of The Washington Note. As always, great thanks.
Thanks, Keith.